Okay, I just start already with a quick introduction of Marta Fiolić. Marta has a master's degree in history and cultural anthropology from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Zagreb. She's currently working on her PhD thesis, which is called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, It Will Be Digitalized," with a subtitle of "Towards the Analysis of Activism Practices in Contemporary Online Documentary." She is doing that PhD at the University of Lisbon, and her work is focused on documentary and activism, interactivity and co-creation, and the intersection of civic culture and interactive documentary. And the talk she holds today is called Interacting with and About Women's Homelessness, a Participatory Artivist Approach. And with that, I give over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much, at first place, for this invitation, Florian. We met in Bucharest when I was presenting not this project, but different ways in which we can mix interactivity with activism. And now, this almost a year after, I can present my own project. As Vanessa said, I'm working on my PhD at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at Nova University of Lisbon. And my research is practice-based, where I'm working on a documentary and at the same time, obviously, writing a thesis. And through this presentation, I will focus on my own case study and an approach I like to label as participatory artivist. That is being applied and developed collaborating with a Lisbon-based non-governmental association called Somos Mulheres, or in English, We Are Women. Why participatory artivist? Artivist because we want to use creative expression as a means of raising awareness and inspiring action, and participatory because we believe that the most effective way to achieve that is by actively involving the people who are directly impacted by the issues we want to address. And when addressing the women's homelessness, the most obvious answer, obviously, then are the women who experienced or are still experiencing homelessness. In 2021, I was introduced to a group of women who started to plan and organize a peer association, meaning that the women who own and run the organization are women themselves who themselves passed through homelessness. So they're building an association of peers, especially women peers. And at the time, in 2021 in Lisbon, this was quite revolutionary because the only social and civic associations who were dealing with this issue were mostly social workers, medical doctors, psychologists, and other specialists, but there was no peer-to-peer associations. Obviously, in our case and the other cases too, their knowledge is also needed and used, but at the core of the association are women themselves. So, how are they planning to make it work? First, they started by setting up regular meetings, be it in the home of another parent association or literally in the streets. They are meeting women who are experiencing homelessness and are exposed to violence in their natural context of life, and establishing horizontal and trusting relationship, which is a crucial part for this baseline. The knowledge of a peer, of someone who passed through these situations, is already being proven as crucial when establishing trust and confidence in a positive outcome. This trust is then used to identify the needs of these women and find a way to address them. One of the urgent issues that we noticed in the very beginnings was the access to health and hygiene, especially when thinking about menstrual hygiene while experiencing homelessness. And the public baths in Lisbon are open between 6 and 8 hours a day, which is like 9 to 5 or something like this, and during the night there is nothing. Following issues were social security and healthcare, problems with citizenship, because we noticed also there is a huge immigrant population that is also experiencing homelessness, and obviously there is a paperwork that needs to be addressed, etc. The language barriers, and then obviously housing and accommodation, labor market, not just providing the assistance to find a job, but also to provide the assistance to people who do have job and still experience homelessness. And finally, when addressing all of these issues around homelessness, and especially women's homelessness, there is a huge importance in sensitizing the community in general. And here it's where the interactive documentary enters. So, summarizing, Somos Mulheres, they are assertive in their ambition to break boundaries, address challenges, and find opportunities in dealing with women's homelessness. And I find this trilogy very important when thinking about creating an interactive documentary, interactive collaborative documentary about it. So we can talk about some strategies that can be employed to achieve this goal for the documentary. First and foremost, fostering open communication. So we are establishing a clear lines of communication and encouraging all participants to share their ideas, perspectives, concerns. And this helps to build trust between all of us participating members and create a collaborative environment that promotes innovation and creativity. Embracing diverse perspectives. Interactive collaborative documentaries often involve participants from different backgrounds and with different experience. In our case, every single one of the women who is working on a documentary, she comes from different country, has completely different family background, social circumstances, etc. So it's very important that when we are meeting and we are talking and discussing about this, that each one of these perspectives and each one of these different backgrounds is accepted and valued. And also embracing this diversity and actively seeking out a range of perspectives can help to create a more nuanced and comprehensive narrative. Encouraging experimentation. So, as we've seen in the previous presentations and probably throughout this today's symposium, we're going to see a lot of different projects with a lot of different experiments bringing in to the topic of interactivity in documentaries. So experimentation, innovation. We can experiment with new formats, with new technologies. Sometimes there is a camera, sometimes there is a mobile phone, sometimes there is a sketch, etc. And this way we are also pushing the boundaries of traditional documentary filmmaking. Planning for flexibility. That's something I learned in the very beginnings of the project. I had a very strict timeline for my PhD. It's going to happen like this, like this, like this. And then obviously in first couple of weeks and months, you understand, no, it's not your time, it's not your timeline. We have to be flexible here. Because making a collaborative documentary can be quite unpredictable. And making peace with it and learning from one another to accommodate each other's needs and difficulties becomes crucial. Finally, but not least important, addressing the power dynamics. They obviously emerge in any kind of collaborative project, especially when something we're talking about interactivity, computers, technology, etc. And each one of us has completely different resources, experiences. So I always tell myself you have to be aware. You have to be aware of your position, and you have to be open. And we have to create a level playing field where everybody feels valued and heard, and it doesn't matter the experience and the background. This, I would say, are the most important aspects to consider while planning a truly collaborative project. In our case, this collaboration implies active participation in decision making, giving the same amount of power to me as a context provider, as Sharon Daniel defined this position, and the women building the association and creating the movement. For instance, it took several meetings and discussions to define the main topics that will be addressed in the documentary, by which we will try to illustrate the dominant issues around women's homelessness in Lisbon, and try to mobilize the community. At the same time, in order to achieve this goal and for the documentary to live its activist impetus, high levels of civic engagement, personal interaction, and social commitment should be present and flow both ways. So, for instance, I'm literally participating in the organization and collaborating with the organization on most diverse levels. It's not just I'm going there with the camera, I'm making a documentary, and it's going to be my documentary. I'm sometimes receiving phone calls and asking me what's the tax number of the association. The association needed a web page, so I did also a web page. It doesn't have anything to do with with the interactive documentary, and basically I'm not a foreign presence in a day-to-day functioning of the association. And besides that, I truly believe in the cause they wanna fight for. We wanna fight for. And there is sometimes I find myself helping with a lot of bureaucracy, and sometimes the camera, I don't touch camera even for weeks or even more. But this also means that the women who started the organization, they also feel very passionately about the interactive documentary and what this documentary can mean to the association. And in means of funding or some kind of outreach, looking for partners, etc. So we are focused on that part. In one of my readings, I found this phrase: "The marriage between interactive documentary and politics provides a new opportunity for creating and reformulating expressions of civic participation." And as a politically active being, and sometimes even frustrated politically active being, and creative at the same time, I was thinking about this phrase, and I was thinking, okay, let's do it with our documentary. Let's see if it works and how it works. And I was very lucky because I met the association in the early beginnings. So the project, the interactive documentary, and the outreach strategy and all the things about the building an association were flowing parallelly. So we could think about both aspects of a political aspect of the organization and interactive aspect in the documentary filmmaking. We could think about and make at the same time. So this kind of civic participation and documentary production were flowing together. Then I would like to just say a few things about participation and collaboration and differences between participation and collaboration. And participation in media, I follow Henry Jenkins and Nico Carpentier, who divide participation in media and through media. And then in media, we can also divide between structural participation and content participation. So in media refers to the act of actively engaging in the production and creation of media content. It can be structurally participating in the organizational and technical aspects of media production, or in content, contributing to a creative process, designing, producing media content, etc. By participating in media, Somos Mulheres, the association, we are working together to create media content that represents their views, values, perspectives, individually and as an association. And after the documentary is launched, the participation through media will start. We will use it to raise awareness, mobilize support, and advocate for social and political change around the issues of women's homelessness. Around and through the interactive documentary, our aim is to launch an online campaign, probably use social media further to distribute and to organize a collaborative action. The participation through media then will mean that the participation broadens outside our circle, outside the Somos Mulheres circle, and includes audiences, public, people interacting with documentary to generate debate. It could be on the platform and also offline, hopefully. Although then the concept of collaboration and participation are often used interchangeably and are equally important in the context of interactive documentary and activism, there are some differences, where participation is more broadly focused on engaging with others and contributing to a collective effort, or not. And it could also mean watching a documentary and just sharing the link, or attending a public debate. We're going to have some public screenings and there is somebody listening and watching the documentary, but then never enters, never says a word during the debate, but it also means he participated. At the same time, actively collaborating on an interactive documentary requires much higher level of communication and coordination, of shared roles, of responsibilities, but this effort is rewarded during the process by the sense of shared ownership, and that's something we are striving to. That I'm not going to say this is my documentary, or Elda or some other person who is making documentary, she's not going to say it's mine, it's ours. And through this sense of shared ownership, the group is empowered, and the representation turns negotiation, and the exchange then is effectively decentralized and horizontal. It allows for true polyphony of voices and perspectives. It challenges power structures, challenges dominant narratives, especially about the homelessness in Lisbon, and facilitates collaborations and further connections. So while we are doing the documentary, we already started to have people interested in like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? How can we help? Is it money? Is it collaboration? We also already have some, for instance, mayor from the city of Lisbon, etc., asking, okay, what's going on here? How we can make this work? And when we look at the interactive documentary structurally, it's all about layers and connections. And the same is with this decentralized exchange and negotiation. This collaborative storytelling design seeks to create a more nuanced, empathetic, and shared construct for media production. These aspects were of most importance when I started the collaboration with Somos Mulheres. And we designed this participatory artivist design as follows. First, I joined the association as a member. I started to participate in weekly meetings and activities. Since then, I offered, like I said before, my knowledge and expertise at different levels and stages of life of the associations. I designed flyers to be distributed among the population experiencing homelessness, built a webpage, also served as a witness and signatory when we finally went to the notary and registered the association. And during the first meetings, when we were only just getting to know each other and when the idea of interactive documentary was presented, we started to collectively debate topics, aims, and objectives. And what was decided early in the beginning was that the topics of the documentary, the main pillars of the documentary, will be exactly the same topics that the association wants to address publicly as its own advocacy plan. When we started to work on the interviews, at first there were open discussions and brainstorming. Then there were interviews one-on-one, me with each one of them, and they decided where they wanted to do the interview. Sometimes it was at their home, sometimes it was in the street where previously, like 5 years ago, one of them slept. And then sometimes it was in the garden, sometimes it was at the association. So we chose a safe place where these one-on-one interviews were conducted. And then finally, this for me the most interesting part, when they decided they want to interview themselves. So sometimes it's 2-to-1, 1-to-1, but I'm just pressing the button on the camera. That's my only job. And even though the filming process now looks like a never-ending process, the materials are looked, observed, and commented as a group. So each time I take the card from the camera, I pass it through my computer, I bring the computer. Okay, let's see. This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. I want to repeat this. For instance, no, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want my family, for instance, in Spain, to see this, so we're going to take it out. And this is constantly negotiated between each other. And lastly, we are planning together for a launch of the documentary, and we are sharing responsibility for advocacy around the issues that the documentary will bring. It's outreach, engaging audiences, and interacting with them online and offline, as well as interacting with the population the association seeks to advocate for and protect. Very briefly, I can now show you the timeline. So the association got a Civic Europe grant in October 2021. It was Ideas Challenge, where a parent association, another association that works with refugees and people experiencing homelessness. A lot of women who are now in this Somos Mulheres, they were already being helped by and participated in the previous association that had a Housing First program. So they would enter in a house, work with psychologists, social workers, etc., find a job and reestablish in the society, establish themselves. And then they applied for the Civic Europe grant, which was basically precisely for this. Throughout 1 year, you're going to have women reunited, peer-to-peer women. They're going to fund and found an association a peer-to-peer association to dealing with women's homelessness. I was introduced, a friend of mine was working as a psychologist in this a parent organization, and she introduced me to the main, now president of the Somos Mulheres Association. It was her idea, still living in the streets, to do something like this. We were introduced and started to, I explained to her what I'm doing for my PhD. I showed some other projects that exist online, etc. And she became very excited and brought me to the association. So then I started to attend the meetings, and one by one meet every single woman involved. Then we decided around February, we decided about outreach strategy draft, and this outreach strategy was both for documentary and for the association. And then around May we started with first interviews, and that process was now when I'm looking back, it's very funny because we decided collectively that this is not going to be some story about poor women and victims, etc. They wanted to be heroes, and they are. So in these first interviews, since some of them already gave interviews for Civic Europe, some of them gave interviews for the Parliament, etc. And this narrative was very taught. Like, I know I have to say this and this and this and this. And these first interviews were exactly like this. Like, we are on some radio show, or that there is some politician in front of me, and then I have to tell what was my life and how bad was my life up till now. And then at some time afterwards, there was a click, I think, between all of us. And then this interview started to be like, the camera is not there. And when I noticed that, I'm now getting chills, because it was really powerful moment when I understood that they're not talking to a politician, they're not talking to sell some image, they're literally sharing the stories, and they're happy with the way they're sharing it. And then we started with these first images, photos, etc. We started to look for local partnerships, like other association. There is this one private association, but it funds a lot of public projects that I don't know how to translate, but Santa Casa de Misericordia, and they fund a lot of social issues. So we already got in contact with them. They offered a place for association to have their meetings, etc. So we started to do this search for local partnerships already with the material that is probably going to enter the documentary, but it was both. It can go both ways. Then in August we designed a logo, and this was also a very, very nice situation, which was one of the women. She was working as a primary teacher, as a visual arts teacher. And when we were talking about the logo, okay, our association needs logo, so what are we going to do? I started to make some kind of sketches, and then we understood, but we have Engracia, she's a painter, she's an artist, Engracia is going to make a logo. And then we met together in her house to design a logo, and that was one of the best interviews, which was given at the same time as drawing the logo. Later, I took the pictures, digitalized, vectoralized, and then this circle is logo, and at the same time it represents them hugging each other and giving each other support for the association. And then you can see it there also with the background and the text. Then afterwards we were invited for one local internet broadcasted radio program, when they also shared their stories, and then even there were talks about them having their own talk, like some kind of a group therapy, but online, where they can talk among each other, and probably some of the shows that are going to be broadcasted on this radio are also going to enter to the documentary. Then we did a victim assistance training together, which was founded by another association that we found in the meantime that could be a very nice partner, since a lot of women who end up in the situation of homelessness in Lisbon, they come from previous cases of domestic violence, so it was very important while approaching to also pass to have some kind of training to address, not just as a peer, but also with some kind of more formal help. And at the same time, we officialized the association. It was done, and did the first public action. We chose 25th of November, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, to organize a sensitization and awareness action for the elimination of sexual violence against women experiencing homelessness. So it was the first public action, followed by the distribution of hygiene kits, and this is also one of the important parts in this section. Sorry, when we are distributing hygiene kits, which is basically a backpack with menstrual products, shower gel, a shampoo and toothbrush, etc., and some towels. In this situation, the camera is never present. So you can see later in interviews when they're talking about the fact that, yeah, the street I've been living 5 years ago, now I can help a woman who lives there now. And we addressed this in the documentary, but you can never see the image because it was together. We decided it's not going to be humane, and we are not going to enter there, and it should be respected. And then just a month ago, I started a serious editing of all these materials. It's gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes. And hopefully by July, we are going to be launching an iDoc online, and we are going to start community screenings and debates. Let's see. We are going to try to evaluate the impact between then July and December, not just among ourselves, but also how it would play out in Lisbon. And although it may seem organized, it seems like maybe it can seem like a smooth process, but there was a lot of ups and downs throughout the last year and a half. A lot of ethical considerations arose through this collaboration, with special attention to the individuals as well as the community, which is considered vulnerable to harm and exploitation. And since we are working with topics that are very sensitive and traumatic, it was necessary to think about and act upon issues, obviously power dynamics that I addressed before, but also consent, confidentiality, and to talk about the potential impact that this whole process of making an interactive documentary of this nature can have on women collaborating and others who could potentially participate. We always had in mind like the families of some of them who don't know the situations they were in, etc. So we always think about how to approach and how to deal with it. And the first and most important part for the project was before even starting, it was to kind of build trust and for us to have a nice relationship like I could have with a friend of mine. And it's actually very nice how when I started, I was always called doctor, and now I'm kiddo. So it's cool. Secondly, throughout the process, we are trying to ensure that everyone is fully aware about the nature and the purpose of documentary. And besides the benefits it could bring, and hopefully it will bring, to also be conscious about the potential risks, because we are talking here about the exposure, about sex work, about substance usage, alcoholism, mental health issues, about social relationships and shame. And all these required careful attention to the needs and perspectives of each of them individually and as a group. And it also, we try to solve this by constantly having this dialogue open. Every time something appears, it can be discussed at the time, it can be on telephone, it can be at the meeting when we are all together, and always respecting each other's dignity and autonomy. A dignity as a word appears innumerable times in almost all the interviews as something re-established, even reconquered with pride. Most of them now got an apartment of their own. Some of them managed to find a job, and now they're building their own NGO, exerting their will to help other women that they felt they were left behind. And I'm not saying here that the process of making an interactive documentary is solely responsible for the empowerment, but I can claim what I observed and that it contributed, obviously alongside therapy and social work, It builds skills and capacity, and their stories are represented the way they want them to be presented, which gives that sense of ownership I mentioned before. They own the documentary together, and the process itself, it strengthened a lot of bonds between them, between me and them, and also pushes us all further. And I would say that this empowerment already shows the interventionist potential of the interactive documentary. Since it's not already online, we can hope that it will be successful it will have successful intervention in the public space, and we are building towards it. Maybe next year I can come back and say if it worked or not. But honestly, when I started the PhD, I was very concerned about what interactive documentary can make when it's already online, when it's published, when it's shared, when it's thought about, when it's etc. And this was my focus. And then I understood that this social change part, this civic activist part, can be encountered inside, in the process of making it. And then I could see changes in approaches, in attitudes, the way they could talk to the audiences. For instance, this picture is from this first public action. And Elda, she's the president of the association. Before it, she was always saying, I don't want to talk to public. I don't know how to talk anymore after all these years. I don't know how to talk. And then throughout the year, she was the first one grabbing the microphone and talking about the experiences and what she wants to do still. So this group now can continue to challenge stereotypes, misconceptions, and to advocate themselves for themselves, and use the documentary to further raise awareness, stimulate discussion, and encourage action. What is already visible, besides empowerment, is that the documentary and the debate around it will be relevant. With that, I think I don't have any doubts. Because the stories are not invented, they're not false, they're not organized by this perfect narrative that how stories should be told. It's the way they talk, they want to talk, they wish to present themselves, and that way I think we can build a bigger empathy, maybe, and bigger understanding in the public. And also this collaboration, we hope to go well beyond the documentary, like for instance with what happened with the radio shows, and there are also some university courses in occupational therapy. They are interested to bring the students of the occupational therapy to collaborate as volunteers with the association, all beyond the documentary. I think I'm running out of time, but it's ending. Finally, these are our future steps, how we want to use the documentary. So first, raising funds, which is obviously crucial, especially since this Civic Europe grant, we had it for a year, October till October, it's done. There are no funds, not funds for the academic projects, not funds for the civic project of the association, no funds whatsoever. So the first focus now, in the next month, is going to be precisely that, to see how we can use this documentary to raise funds for the association. Through it also, we want to broaden support network of professionals, volunteers, etc. And also we want to reach other associations and schools in different neighborhoods when the homelessness is much it's the most visible. And try to educate, to change attitudes, to bring about more understanding, especially about homelessness and women's homelessness. And finally, we want to influence public policies. Some of them already highlighted as urgent and necessary. For instance, there is already a manifest written that we all wrote together, accompanied by the public petition for the free distribution of menstrual and hygiene products for those experiencing homelessness. We used the photos and videos we produced for the documentary in order to publicize this petition, and let's see how this plays out, and now we can maybe start a debate. Thank you.